Hey there, this is Buster again, and it's story time. I'm going to read to you the second story out of the book I wrote. The second story is called My First Memory, or The First Memory. It was hot inside the house, but as someone threw me out a bedroom window into someone else's arms, I felt the cold air outside. The house was on fire. This is my first memory. My mother was the one who caught me. I don't remember anything before that night or much about the rest of that night. We moved into a rental house while the old one was being rebuilt. The rental house had never been painted, like most typical sharecropper houses. It was termite and roach infested, but it was sheltered. The smaller house next door was occupied by a family in which two of the children had Down syndrome. There were some terrible things that went on in that family, especially with the little girl who had the Down syndrome. I was slowly becoming aware of things. My age couldn't have been more than 5, but I believe I was 4. The next memories are of a pump house and a neighborhood bully sexually abusing me. That was as hard as you can imagine. It went on until about 2nd grade. My dad found out and let me know that it was my fault. Well, birds of a feather will flock together. My dad wasn't much to speak of at all. He held the teenager faultless and blamed the 5-year-old, me. My dad was a predator also. My mother had to sleep with my sister to keep him from raping my sister. I didn't know this until much later in life. I was a very sick little child, and he was so ashamed to have a sick boy. He called me his bum kid and told me that I would never amount to anything. He told my sister and 2 brothers not to get attached to me because I wasn't going to be around to live that long, and that I would never see the age of 12 years old. I was asthmatic for all of my memory and really didn't like eating anything. My poor mother, it must have worn on her so much to see me suffer. No matter how bad the environment, kids find a way to play and to laugh. Even I found a way to laugh and play. We made up a game called roller bat. We would hit the ball in the street in front of our house. One person would hit the ball down the street while the others waited to intercept it or catch it. The batter would lay the bat on the pavement, and the catcher would walk toward the center of the street, keeping the same distance away from the batter as to where he had caught the ball. The catcher would roll the ball at the bat. If the ball hit the bat and the batter could not catch it before it hit the ground, then he was relieved as the hitter, and the one who rolled the ball got to take over hitting. We loved to play war games also, using sticks for guns and tin cans for radios. Dirt clods from the field served as hand grenades. As with all kids, these types of games often escalated into a dirt clod war. Potatoes and peaches worked well as projectiles also. We were tough little boys. No room for tears, and don't dare show any weakness. We had a crop or harvest for every season. Turnip greens, collard greens, mustard greens, and other leafy vegetables were the winter produce. Cucumbers, corn, and all sorts of peas and beans, and okra were the summer crops. Work never ended, or so it seemed. A couple of times each summer we got to go to the creek and go swimming. This was a treat among all the work we had to do. Most of the time when we asked to go, we were told to swim in our sweat. The work was so intense that it added a huge amount of excitement or pleasure to just simple things like going to the creek or a game of roller bat. Being a sick child, it was a huge disappointment to my dad. When he found out that I had been homosexually abused, he just blamed me and used it to blackmail me when he didn't want me to tell the things that he was doing. You be quiet, boy, or I'm going to tell your mama what you did. These words were often spoken. If I think about them, I can still hear his awful voice. I just wanted to be normal and accepted. My health was just his excuse to be a workless father. I worked harder than anyone, trying to earn approval, but it just wasn't going to be. If someone likes you, then you can do no wrong. If they hate you, then you can do no right. Intense events affect all of us, usually in polar opposite directions. There's an idea that homosexual men were abused as little boys, an idea I don't necessarily agree with. My reaction to the homosexual abuse was in an extreme heterosexual way. Being introduced to sex before elementary school in a violent act, along with an awful bastard dad, caused me to want a woman before I was in school. I would fantasize about Annette Funicelli at age 6. These are not the thoughts of a normal 6-year-old, at least I hope not. I was hoping to find a way out from under the guilt and the shame that I was wearing. I think a hug from my dad and a little protection would have made a huge difference. That also was just a thought. The saddest part of this is that I am not alone. There were other victims, and little boys victims, little girl victims, and we're all trying to resolve the memories and shed the guilt. When you share about abuse, especially child abuse, you will get shut down quickly by the person that you tell. It takes a professional, not a friend. Friends are for your support, but not necessarily the fix. Victims think there was something they could have done to prevent the abuse. This thought process brings on more guilt and more shame. There's nothing that the victim could have done. It was going to happen. Once you forgive yourself, then you can forgive and forget the others who hurt you. Find a way to tell someone, such as a professional counselor. You want to look for a counselor who specializes in child abuse. You can't fix yourself. It takes help and support. I look back at our neighborhood and neighboring town. With all that I found out on how many of my friends were abused, it makes me question if there was something in the water. In those days, there was no real help. You took on the burden of being abused and wore it like it never happened. The decision-making process for the rest of your life is malfunctioning from the point of the abuse on. But life is good. Buster.